But once you introduce me, Kristen, just going to go and do the screen share, and I could find my PowerPoint should come up, and then just do it from there. So
Sounds like a plan.
okay,
And YouTube is up and running. YouTube always takes a minute to get up to speed.
Hmm.
Now that I've actually figured out how to cross stream these briefings over to YouTube, because that's how we used to do it back before the pandemic.
Right. Yep.
But then last year or last semester, I was going back, getting the Zoom recording and editing it and re-uploading it, which was always a laborious process. But now that I figured out how to get it over to YouTube, I don't have to do anything.
That's great. Yeah.
Saves
So
me a lot.
have you had more briefings in person or Zoom, or kind of a mix of both this semester?
We've only had one that's been in person.
Okay.
All the others have been remote. Part of the reason for that is because we've had a lot of people joining us from outside central PA.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the one good thing that's come out of these briefings. In fact, last week we had Jess Torpy from Uniper Global Commodities in Dusseldorf, Germany, join us.
Wow. Yeah, I saw that. Jess, worked for us many years ago. I believe he was an intern for us many years ago. Yeah.
So yeah, that's one nice thing about the pandemic is we can have somebody on another continent give one of these.
That is great. Yeah, that's excellent.
All right. Well, I showed 10:15. So Dave, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to roll.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to this week's weather briefing. It is squarely in the middle of November 15th to be exact. Thanks for tuning in to this week's weather briefing. I am pleased to welcome no stranger to these weather briefings, AccuWeather's senior meteorologist, Dave Dombek, to present. And Dave, I will get rid of my screen share and I will let you have the floor, sir.
All right. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate the offer to do this. I try to do this once a semester, as always. And so this is like you said, right smack dab in the middle of November 15th today. I guess you could say it's the Ides of November, right? I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, something like that.
Yep. So anyway, let me do the screen share here. And so I will get this here. Okay, now I am going to get into the PowerPoint. All right, everybody could see that well.
That works.
So again, this is my weather briefing for this semester. I'm a senior meteorologist at AccuWeather. I've been there for 41 and a half years almost, well, 41 plus, let's call it. But I've seen lots of different weather situations over the years, as you can imagine. And this is what I'm going to do today. I know we're limited, and I like to, rather than going right into the meat of the forecast and the upcoming weather and so forth, I like to usually do something a little different in the beginning. And I'm big into Climo, so I'm going to go through some Climo stats for State College for this year, for this fall, kind of do some comparisons. I'm going to do a little walk down memory lane here for November 1995 and the what happened prior to the Penn State Michigan game that year. Also, just throw in sprinkle in a few winter forecasting tips. We could have a whole session on this sometime, but just wanted to sprinkle in a few here. And then, of course, we'll be doing the current and upcoming weather. So we'll start with Climo. For the year, this is through November 13th. I don't have the data yet. I didn't have it when I was preparing this morning. Through the 14th, so we're going to go through the 13th. Running somewhat above normal for this year, 2.5 degrees above. Precip certainly above. We've had a wet year, 43.25 versus the 36.62 for the date through that date. Now, for the same time last year, much drier last year at this time, 28.64. Now you go back 3 years ago, that extremely wet, the record wet year of 2018 through the 13th. And there was over 56.5 inches to this point. So yeah, it's been a wet year, but it doesn't even hold a candle to, what was happening in 2018 at this time. As for the fall, September, it was warm and wet. We were 2.5 degrees or 2.1 degrees above normal, and we had a lot of rain, 7.71 versus the 395 normal. October was a very warm month, and we had actually close to the normal rainfall. So we continued the warm stretch that we had in September, and even more so with the anomalies, but the rainfall was ended up being close to normal. We were above 7.4 degrees above normal for the month. Pretty incredible. And precip, like I said, very close to normal, 3.51, and normal was 3.46. Now, the average temperature, this is significant here, the average temperature for the month ended up being 59.2 degrees. That actually tied with 2007 for the warmest October on record. The lowest temperature for the entire month was only 39 degrees. And even at my place, I live east of Bellefonte near Zion. I live in a real pit here as far as it's an excellent radiation of cooling spot here. Oftentimes, like if it's 40 in State College officially, I'll be 31 or 2 here. I mean, I typically run anywhere from 8 to 10 or 8 to 12 degrees lower than it does in State College proper. My lowest temperature the entire month of October at my place was 32. I reached that twice, and it was very briefly. It only got there just, for, maybe 20 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. It just very briefly touched 32. There was no plant damage to our garden, anything. So here it is on the 31st on Halloween day. I mean, I was out there picking peppers from my garden. That's almost unheard of. I mean, that just never happens at my place, but it did this year. Now, once we got into November, totally different story. Everything changed rapidly once we got into the month of November. We did drop below freezing. Again, this is officially, for State College, at Walker Building. We dropped below freezing for the first time on the 2nd, and then that was followed by 5 consecutive nights with lows in the 20s. So while we were held back, no freeze, and then boom, once it went, I mean, everything was just wiped out with 5 nights in a row with low temperatures in the 20s. So that pretty much just killed everything that was left as far as any tender vegetation out there. During that stretch, talking about, how my place is a great radiation cooling spot, my low was actually 16. And I believe it was on that Saturday morning. It was the last night. It was actually the coldest night of that stretch. It was that last night. That Saturday morning, 16 degrees down in my shed, down by my garden. Now, despite that, temperatures are now actually not too far from normal for the month. Just back on the 13th, through the 13th, we were actually 1.2 above, and that was mostly due to the warm days that we had last week. Now, last couple of chilly days here have knocked that down some, so I suspect that right now we're very close to normal. So as far as precipitation, right now, again, very close to normal. We were dry, and then all of a sudden we had that big rainstorm late last week, and that really brought us right back up, give or take. I don't have the stats again for, through the 14th, but we're pretty close to normal right now, precip wise. And we did have our first trace of snow this past weekend, not unusual. Last year, first trace actually fell on November 1st. We didn't have our first measurable snow last year until December 1st. Now we're going to rewind back to 1995. A very interesting month weather-wise here in central Pennsylvania. It started out warm. On the 2nd of the month, it was 72 degrees here in State College. Then on November 11th, we had a really powerful cold front that came through. There was a wind gust at the university, 80 miles per hour with that fropa. So very, very strong front. The temperatures fell from about 60 that afternoon to, by late evening that day, it was down to 32. So massive temperature drops that happened behind the front, really strong cold advection. And then a couple of days later, we had a big early season snowfall. We had the total was pretty close to 1.5 feet. There was about a foot, give or take, on the front end of that storm. And then we had some boundary layer issues. We had some rain and mixed for a while. It kind of went over to rain and mixed wet snow. And then we changed back to snow, and we had, a back end 5 or 6 inches or 4 to 6 inches or whatever. So the total ended up being close to 18 inches. as you can imagine, it was a very, very, extremely wet and heavy snow. It caused many tree limbs and branches to snap. A lot of the, or at least some of the trees still had some leaves on it. So it kind of held that snow in there. And so it was a nightmare for the power companies around here, the electric companies. A lot of, power lines snapped. There were power outages to many thousands across the county here and up in neighboring counties. I remember where we were living at the time, on the other side of Bellefonte, we were without power for like 33 hours straight. And I know some other people that had double that amount of time that they were without power. So I remember where we lived there, looking up on what we call it Purdue Mountain, Bald Eagle Ridge, where there's a power line cut going over the mountain. During the height of that evening, I remember seeing like blue flashes where, power lines like was snapping and then the electricity was flashing like that. It was a really wild evening. I remember that. And then again, just a few days later, now we have the Penn State Michigan football game in Beaver Stadium scheduled for the 18th. So, and it was actually, that game was referred to by some as the Snow Bowl. It was crazy. They had to get like tons and tons of people in there to shovel out Beaver Stadium with all that snow. And some of those people shoveling actually included inmates from Rockview State Correctional Institution just down the road here. So it was crazy. They did get it shoveled out. The game did happen. And that game actually had a much better outcome than last Saturday's contest with Michigan. Penn State won that game 27-17. Now, a few winter forecasting tips. Again, we could spend a whole session. I'd love to do this sometime, but just wanted to throw out a few that came to mind and something to keep in mind when you're forecasting going into the winter months now, very, in the not too distant future. Keep in mind water. Of course, land heats up and cools down much quicker than water does. It just takes a long time to get those water temperatures down into late fall and into early to midwinter. So keep in mind that the water is still relatively warm early in the season. And so you want to make sure that you don't over forecast snow when you're forecasting anywhere close to the ocean, a bay, a sound, whatever, even near the Great Lakes. As long as there's any kind of onshore wind component, always be cognizant of that. You just don't over forecast snow because it's very easy to do. Now, the critical thickness, it kind of goes along with the same theme here that, let's say, the 500 to 1,000 millibar thickness. It's not the same throughout the season. You can't always use 540 or 542 or 3 or whatever, for State College, let's say. It's not the same, start to finish through the season. That critical thickness tends to be lower early in the season and then again late in the season, due to boundary layer issues. Just think about just what happened like yesterday, especially last evening would have been a good example. I looked back and I think the actual thicknesses, the verified thicknesses last evening, let's say at 0Z, were right around 532, 531, 533, somewhere in there. They were in the low 530s. And yet it was hard for that precip to be all snow. It was all wet snow, let's say above 1,200 feet or 1,300 feet in elevation for the most part. It's melting a lot of it. You got below 1,100 feet for sure, and it was tending to be more of a rain snow mix. And then you got a little lower and it was tending to be more rain. So it was really struggling even with those low 530s thicknesses last evening. Again, that was a classic example where you were dealing with the warmer boundary layer. Upper level troughs, the tilt, very, very important. Watch the tilt. Is it a positively tilted trough where the cold air is just going to progress very quickly and move in and there's not going to be a lot of development to a storm? It's going to be a weaker wave. Is it more of a neutral tilt, or is it a negatively tilted trough, which typically produces your strongest surface storms and the most amount of precipitation? Watch for those situations where the trough is transitioning its tilt from positive to neutral and then eventually over to negative. There oftentimes in those situations, there's the potential for a storm to overachieve somewhere. So oftentimes the models tend to overdo snow and everything. Yes, that certainly is a good rule of thumb. But in those cases where you got a transitioning trough from positive to neutral to negative, then you've got the possibility that you could really do well, and maybe more so than the models are giving it credit for in those situations. And then watch the curvature of the surface isobars. When you look at your map, your surface map, if you analyze a map, actually, do you have cyclonic curvature? Do you have anticyclonic curvature? Is it just sort of neutral? Very important, because that really will, if you have everything else being equal in the atmosphere, but you have strong cyclonic curvature, that's going to lead to more precipitation due to that good surface convergence that happens with that cyclonic curvature. So always be watching how your isobars are curved on a surface map. Very important when forecasting any time of the year, for sure, but going into the winter months, it's very critical. So that's it for the forecasting tips. Like I said, we could spend a lot more time on that. I'd love to, but we're going to get into some of the current situation going on now. Actually wanted to start off here with just some kind of highlights that some takeaways that I saw looking at the current, in the upcoming pattern here in the next week or so. We're definitely in a progressive, a transient, sort of a back and forth weather pattern. And it's, there's no blocking to speak of. The NAO is currently positive. You can see that I actually did a little screenshot here. We're currently positive NAO. It looks like it's good consensus. We're going to kind of trend back toward neutral and maybe even somewhat negative. And then the models are like all over the place after that. And then of course, we are currently in a La Nina pattern. There's some debate as to whether it's going to be a moderate La Nina or more of a weak La Nina this winter. And I think that will, which way that goes, I think will have at least somewhat of a bearing, and maybe a significant bearing on how much snow we end up getting here this winter. Here's your sea surface temperature anomalies, and looking at your different your Nino zones there. A lot of times the 3, the 0.4, that's good, but you can see we're definitely in a La Nina right now by looking at the the graphs there. So again, there's no doubt that we are in a La Nina. It's just a matter of where we're going to be in a month from now, a couple months from now, as far as these anomalies go. Is it going to be strong, or is it going to be probably not going to be a strong La Nina, but it certainly could be a moderate, or does it tend to be more weak as we go forward into winter? I'm just going to do some, kind of start from the top. I probably could have started with the 200 or 300, but we're going to start with the 500 millibar this morning. This, again, you could really just see that tells the story right there. Ridge out west, trough in the east. I mean, it doesn't get any simpler than that. And you could kind of see where the base of the trough is kind of coming through the eastern part of the country this morning. So the height's really kind of bottoming out, or maybe they've already bottomed out earlier this morning. And these are your anomalies. Again, pretty much a no-brainer. One goes with the other. There's your big height anomalies, positive-wise, out west, and your big negative anomaly in the eastern part of the country. Here's your 700 millibar this morning. Again, kind of shows a similar pattern, shows your moisture with the trough in the east. There's your kind of warm advection zone there in the Midwest, and a lot of dry air out west underneath that ridge. Here's your 850 millibar this morning. Again, same theme. The chill is in the east, especially the Great Lakes in the northeast, and your warmth is from the plain states on westward there. So again, everything looks very like it should be, looking at going from 500 millibars on down. This is the surface pressures. This is actually, don't get scared here. The gradient is not that strong. It's these surface pressures are actually analyzed every 1/10 of a millibar. So yeah, the gradient is not that crazy. Looks worse than it is, but I like looking at this because you can really see where the surface pressure features are. You can see that low up over northern New England. You can see the high pressure system down over Tennessee, and pretty good northwest gradient here this afternoon, right now, and certainly for the rest of today. Oops, going backwards. Now here's your surface map plot, kind of a close-up map here centered on Pennsylvania. And you see a lot of wind barbs out of some westerly component there. You certainly see the chilly temperatures. You don't see a really big temperature dew point spread. So while it certainly is a chilly air mass, it's not like you're dealing with Arctic air and very low dew points, down in the teens or single numbers or whatever. So the air is pretty saturated. You've got the flow, somewhat of a gradient over the Great Lakes, picking up a lot of moisture there. So that is your surface map this morning. Composite radar, no surprises there. There's your pockets of precip over the Northeast, especially so most significant up in Maine, up close to that low pressure system up there. The rest of it is more convective stuff and lake effect farther west and south. You got your warm advection zone out there in the Midwest, and then you got your next system coming into the Pacific Northwest coast. The GOES 16 visible satellite shot from mid-morning. Again, you could see kind of the tail end of a front dropping down into South Florida there. A lot of clear skies over the southeast. And then, of course, you got a lot of clouds, which, again, no surprise, given the pattern, low heights, chilly air aloft, and the cyclonic, or at least neutral curvature. A lot of clouds up in Pennsylvania, New York State, and so forth. Now we're going to go through just a couple of, I think I just got like maybe 3 different shots here of the 500 millibar pattern as we progress through the week here. We saw what it was today, big trough in the east, ridge out west. Now we're going to fast forward. This is just 2 days from now. So you can see the transient nature of this pattern here. This is only 2 days from now. This is Wednesday, 18Z. This is based off of the GFS, but they're all pretty similar. And you can see now that we've got a ridge axis that's come eastward. The heights are way, way higher now in Pennsylvania here, for example, on Wednesday than what they are today. So that ridge has progressed eastward. And then we have our next shortwave, our next trough now coming into the upper Midwest and Northern Plains, Western Lakes at that time. So now we go to Friday. Well, we keep progressing stuff along, to keep moving stuff along in the flow. And there's our trough now. The next trough coming into the Northeast. So we see much lower heights by Friday. This is actually 12Z. And that next trough coming eastward. And obviously that's going to be our next shot of some chilly weather at the end of the week. And here's Sunday now. That trough is long gone. You got a little shortwave ridging. Not that the heights aren't as high as they will be, let's say on Wednesday here. But the heights bounce up some behind that, but then you got another trough shortwave centered a little farther north, maybe not as low heights, but you got your next disturbance now coming into the Great Lakes region there on Sunday. And here's the mean sea level pressure and thicknesses. We're going to go out to Thursday, at 18Z, and you could see the next front there. You could see the, about where the frontal boundary would be. There's not a whole lot of precip. This system is kind of moisture starved. And that's really kind of the theme of the week. There's not going to be any big storms, any big precip events here. And you can see there, we've got some showers, and some of this, it almost has that look to it that this could be like an anafront type situation where a lot of your showers, a lot of your precip could actually be, with and behind the cold front as opposed to ahead of it with a catafront situation. And you can see the next shot of cold air now, fairly low thicknesses. What do we have? 534, 28, 22. So you got some pretty low thicknesses now coming into the upper Midwest there on Thursday. And now here's Sunday. Now that system, of course, is gone. It's progressed eastward. A little bit of, uptick in the thicknesses and so forth. And we're kind of waiting now for the next cold front to come in from the north and west, coming through the eastern lakes at that time on Sunday. Just a few model soundings to share here. This is the, let me see here. Well, you know what? This is an old one. I was going to say that was an old one that I did not delete from last time. So we're going to skip through this. Sorry about that. We're actually going to start with this one here. This is today. This is off of the NAM. This is the current run of the NAM, and this is a snapshot here for 18Z this afternoon. And again, you could see a lot of clouds, a lot of moisture in the lower levels there, but there are some breaks, and I think that's going to be, the way it is today. A lot of clouds, there are some breaks of sun. You got that westerly flow, and certainly things lined up pretty well. So it is going to be pretty gusty, pretty blustery out there this afternoon. Now here's the Euro sounding for 18Z on Wednesday. And can you say cloudy? I mean, November, there's a lot of cloudy days, as we know. Anybody spend any time here in State College in Central PA, we know that this time of the year is cloudy. We get many, many days, and sometimes you don't see the sun for days on end, November and December here. But that has a classic look to it. It looks like the low-level flow is south, or could even be like southeast here. A little bit of an upslope component. It's trying to warm up, but boy, you got some dry air in the mid levels there. But man, look at that moisture in the low levels. And I think the NAM even looked worse than that, which is not a surprise. So certainly basically a cloudy day here coming up on Wednesday as it tries to warm up some. And here's Thursday now. Thursday should be our mildest day. You might have some breaks. There might be, especially earlier in the day there, the flow at this point still southwesterly. It is going to shift after the faux here, but that is our mildest day. The flow is actually turned around to west of due south now, and that should be our mildest day of the week coming ahead of the next front. Now here's Friday, deja vu. We're kind of back now to a northwest flow or west-northwest flow. Pretty dry looking. But there is that pinch layer right there at the top of the boundary layer at 850. So I expect to see the standard, very common State College Strato Q day on Friday, if that's right, with the cold advection. Wanted to point out some 12Z NAM gridded data, and this is the wind data. And so we saw it was pretty well mixed this afternoon, pretty well aligned. And here's our gridded numbers, focusing on every 25 millibars with the wind speeds, the wind direction wind speeds progged off of the NAM. And you can see like at 18Z today, for example, we've got, it's 280 flow for the most part, 270, 280, very well lined up in there. But look at the speeds. Once you get, let's say, to 950, you're looking at 19 knots. You go to 925, you're at 24 knots. 900, you're at 27, 8, and so on and so forth as you go up the column there. And so you're probably going to be able to tap into some of that with a well-aligned flow and unstable atmosphere this afternoon. So that's why I do expect some gusts, especially in more open areas, exposed areas, probably some gusts 30, maybe 35 miles per hour at times today. It looks unstable, and you're going to be able to tap some of that and have that downward transfer of momentum down to the surface with those winds. I'm going to look at some gridded data here. This is the 0Z run of the Euro. And the models are very, very good agreement this week. There's not a whole lot of, to argue about there. There's not a whole lot of differences. They're all singing pretty much the same tune here. Not a lot of precip, no big events coming up this week. Your best chance of anything significant and measurable as far as showers, rain showers go, would be on Thursday, and especially Thursday afternoon and evening. But you can see the trend there. Look at your 850s, for example. See where they are today. They kind of bottom out here this afternoon, tonight into tomorrow morning. Still pretty chilly tomorrow, but by the end of the day, they're coming up nicely. And then look at that nice increase in the 850s on Wednesday, and at least into Thursday, part of Thursday, and then another big drop off in those 850s at the end of the week, and then some recovery over the weekend. Kind of a similar theme there. You look at your 2 meter temperatures, you look at your thicknesses, talk about the roller coaster ride, with your thicknesses. What do you got there? 526 this morning, and then you're bouncing up to 560 kind of midweek there, the end of the day on Wednesday, and then you're right back down again, 530, 527. So you got that roller coaster ride here. Very, very similar look on all the models this coming week. And here's the GFS again. Really very, very similar look, height wise, 850 wise, trends it's all the same, little nuances with the numbers, but it's got the same theme here going forward for the rest of this week and into the upcoming weekend. And one good thing we're seeing, we're definitely seeing pretty strong signals now. We're going to have a dry weather, chilly, but dry weather for the upcoming Penn State game with Rutgers on Saturday. So what does it all mean? Kind of a summary here. Looking forward, definitely a roller coaster week with temperatures. It's cold today, still pretty chilly tomorrow. Tries to recover some on Wednesday. And then we're going to get our mildest weather on Thursday. And then it gets colder again Friday and into Saturday. No big storms this week. Limited precip opportunities. Maybe a couple of snow showers around today. The best chance of rain showers would be on Thursday again, especially in the afternoon and evening. And it probably no more than a flurry on Friday. It looks pretty dry. It is a northwest flow or west-northwest flow. It's cold advection. The heights kind of get lower. You always have to open the door for maybe a lone flurry or two, but it didn't look like a big deal here on Friday. And then, like I said, likely dry weather for the Penn State game on Saturday. The sky cover is a little questionable. I looked at some models and, it's hinting out maybe it's like a partly to mostly sunny day, and it could very well be. And then I happened to look at the Euro sounding for that afternoon at like 18Z, and it looks like there was actually a fairly thick cirrus layer that was forecast that afternoon. So, this time of the year with a lower sun angle, a fairly thick cirrus shield could look pretty cloudy. You have that same situation, that same cirrus layer, on a May or June or July day with a high sun angle, it's going to look a lot brighter. But in mid-November, it's going to have a cloudier look to it. So that's something we'll work out as we go through the week. But right now, it certainly looks dry and chilly for the Penn State game on Saturday. So we'll wrap it up with the forecast. Just call it variable cloudiness. A lot of clouds, a few breaks now and then, certainly blustery. It's cold. A couple of snow showers around. It could even be a few raindrops. Again, dealing with that boundary layer issue of what your elevation is in the area. There could be some raindrops, but bottom line, it's not going to be much. There'll be a lot of stretches in here where it's just dry and it's doing nothing this afternoon. We'll call it a high of 41, certainly not much above 40. And we'll call it winds westerly generally. We'll go 12 to 25, and I think there will be some gusts up close to 35 miles per hour, especially in the more open areas that are exposed to that west wind. It'll certainly stay brisk this evening with the gradient still there. The wind speeds will be dropping off, but only very slowly, and then less wind overnight tonight. And it turns out partly cloudy and upper 20s for the low. Overall, not a bad day tomorrow. Still chilly. We're starting off, in the upper 20s, and I think we'll get up through the 30s pretty easily, and then maybe get to a little bit higher than today. We'll call it 44 for the high. And overall, it's, like I said, more sun than clouds. Wednesday, a mostly cloudy day. It could just be cloudy. Like, get rid of the word mostly. It certainly looks like clouds are going to be very dominant here, but not as chilly. Temperatures trying to get a little milder here. We're going to struggle, but I think we will get at least to the 50-ish, and I think we have a shot here by the end of the day of getting into the low to mid 50s. So we'll call it 53 for the high. The highest temperatures of the week should occur on Thursday. Ahead of that front, probably like a midday high here, early afternoon at the latest. We'll go with a high of 61, clouds, some sunshine. The best chance of the sun is first half of the day. And maybe a couple of showers or a few showers. Maybe it's even like a, couple of hours of steady light rain if it's more of that, anafront type look to it. So we'll have to, watch that as we go through the week here. And the best chance of that wet weather Thursday would be in the afternoon and evening hours. Then Friday, a brisk, colder day. Intervals of clouds and sun, and it might tend to lean more toward the clouds. Again, if I had to say which one is going to win out, just statistically would tell me that clouds are probably going to be more dominant here on Friday. We'll go with a high of 41, kind of a similar high to today. And then we'll call it dry and chilly then for the game on Saturday. So that pretty much wraps up my briefing, and we'll open it up for any questions and comments.
All right. Thank you very much, Dave. Another engaging weather briefing as always. I'm not sure if you're seeing it, but there have been plenty of comments dropped in chat, mainly by Bill, and I'm guessing that's Rich Grum in here as well.
All right, let me, so I will stop my screen share here. And wow, there's a whole bunch here, yeah. So here we go. So yeah, the snowball, yeah. Bigelow, okay, the snowstorm. Yeah, I never got below 40 in Park Forest in October. Wow, that's incredible. Yeah. So yeah, that's a good yeah, watch the trees fall in Park Forest. Yeah, look, not just branches, but actually like trees. Several transformers blow, kind of a bluish flash when they went. Yeah, wow, that was a crazy storm, no doubt. Remember it very well. I remember my younger daughter at the time, she was only 3. Yeah, she was like just over 3. And she loved Barney. And she swore that, mom did something to the TV, is not letting her watch Barney. Didn't realize we had no power. And she wanted to watch her Barney on TV.
Priorities.
Yep. Yeah. So, yep, the snowball, yeah. So anybody else with any comments or questions on the upcoming pattern? It's like I said, what screamed out at me on that pattern is it's just back and forth. It's just the roller coaster ride. It's very transient for now anyway, no blocking, just one system after another. You go up, you go down, you go up, you go down, and no big storms. So that's kind of the theme here for the next 5-6 days.
I will also say, while we wait for more comments on Zoom, I am keeping an eye on YouTube's chat. I can see we've got a couple of folks watching there. Hooray for YouTube analytics. Right. So if any of you on YouTube have comments with the acknowledgement that there is a slight delay, go on and pop your comments in YouTube, and I'll relay them here into Zoom. I figured out that Zoom, or that the YouTube stream is on the same famous 7-second delay that TV operates on.
Oh, there you go. Yep.
At least with the settings I have it configured for. Yep. Oh yeah, and Marissa raises a good point for those in Zoom. Make sure you direct it to everybody, not just hosts and panelists. I just want one more big snowstorm before I graduate next month. That's all I want. That's all I want.
Yeah, look at that one last year. That was that mid-December storm last year was super. I mean, that was a great storm.
Yeah, real pity that the university had sent all of us home at Thanksgiving, and so we weren't here for it.
Oh, what's your hometown?
I'm from Burlington, North Carolina.
Okay.
we got a little bit of rain out of that system, and that was it.
Wow.
I think my weather station picked up a 1/4 inch, if that. I'd have to go back and look, but it was insignificant compared to what happened up here.
Yeah, that was a good one. I mean, for our standards, that was a good storm, no doubt.
Well, and then there was a system, I think it's almost 3 years ago to the day. It was my first snowstorm at Penn State. I know it was before Thanksgiving. I'm pretty sure the final total here was 10 1/4 inches at the Walker Building.
Yes, yeah, there was a shot of Arctic air that came in, and then there was a system that came out very quickly and attacked that Arctic air, and the dew points were low enough, the wet bulbs were down, and it looked like, yeah, we were going to be struck, but it just, I mean, it came so quickly. And those are the things, that's another, if I had to give another tip, a winter forecasting tip, watch those situations where you have a fresh injection of Arctic air, low dew point air, and then immediately a system comes out and attacks it, that fresh cold air mass. They're always, that always spells trouble.
Or fun if you don't have to go anywhere.
Yep.
Yeah, Rich, that's the November 18 system I was thinking of. Yeah. It's almost 3 years ago to the day, I think. Because it was about this time. I distinctly remember that because I had to be working on chemistry homework that day, but I was really annoyed because there was snow. Was stuck inside working on Chem 110.
Couldn't concentrate, huh?
Yeah, seriously. Unfortunately, the computer lab in Waring Commons had windows. Anyway, I am not seeing any comments on YouTube, and I don't see any further queries in Zoom. So I suppose with that, we can part ways. And Dave, thank you once again.
My pleasure. Always a pleasure. We'll see you next semester.
All right. Thank you so much.
Bye.
There will be no weather briefing next week because we will all be enjoying the Thanksgiving holiday with our family and friends. So join us on the 29th. And I have promptly forgotten I looked before I clicked onto the Zoom and I forgot who was doing the 29th. It's it's Marissa. Marissa's doing the weather briefing 2 weeks from now. And I believe you're actually going to be in person. So be sure to join us 2 weeks from now, not next week, at the same time, same place if you want to join us on Zoom, on YouTube, or in the Weather Center. And we'll see you all next week. Have a great week, everybody. All right. That